Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Let's get back to Iraq because there's some things happening. The funny thing is when I've seen his picture, does this look like he's got a big nose? Before we get started, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. Right now is a great time to be buying gold and silver. When you do, go check out our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you are a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and they will give you a free half ounce. So Al-Fayed reveals the conditions of the factions to hand over their weapons according to Sadr's call. Remember, there's all these militia groups that are out there that have weapons. I mean, that stems all the way back from their time of fighting with ISIS, as well as everybody else for that matter. But you can't have a bunch of people out there running around with guns. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, as long as it's being used appropriately. But yeah, people have political differences. Can't be out there whacking one another. It says Al-Fayed stated during his hosting on the Ball 3 program, which was followed by the news that Sadr stipulated that the faction's weapons be handed over to the Popular Mobilization Authority within months, and in principle, this proposal was approved. Now remember, the Popular Mobilization Group, I'd be a little concerned about that, and here's why. 1/3 of them are followers of Sadr. 1/3 of them are followed by a religious leader in Iraq, and another third of them are loyal to the mullahs over in Iran. So if you're asking Iraqi people to turn over their guns to a group of militia that are supporters of the mullahs, I'd be nervous about that. I really would. Fayed added that the faction stipulated the formation of a new government and the withdrawal of U.S. forces in return for handing over their weapons. That was the agreement. I rule out restoring to internal fighting as the various political parties have sufficient awareness. The popular crowd is far from the political debate. The factions that give themselves the right to resist have nothing to do with the government or the commission. The coordinating body of the resistance faction is a moral body that declares itself and adopts certain operations, adding that there is no overlap between the crowd and these factions, and there may be individuals' contributions by crowd, security, and even judicial elements, which is a matter. He stressed that the Popular Mobilization Authority issues statements on more than one occasion in which it denies its connection to any operation carried out by the factions. Well, I mean, again, that's something that they're going to have to learn how to deal with and prove, because I really don't think that people trust that whole situation, and rightfully so. We are talking about a group of people that were put together to fight ISIS. So these are seasoned and trained fighters for sure. And again, the fact that they support the mullahs in Iran doesn't help matters much at all. So Sadr refuses to hold a new meeting with the coordination framework and insists on majority government. So this isn't good for the coordination framework. Things aren't going according to plan. Sadr gave him 40 days. And like I said, I don't know what's going to happen once the courts get involved. If the coordination framework cannot form a government, I'm curious to see what happens once Sadr comes back, how this is going to work out. Iraqi political source in the southern city of Najaf said today, Thursday, that the leader of the Sadrist movement refused a request to hold a new meeting with leaders and representatives of the Shiite coordination framework, which was aimed at discussing new solutions to the crisis. More than a week ago, Sadr, who's blocked the Sadrist movement, led the general legislative election in the country by a large margin from his closest competitor. What was considered an offer of political forces opposed to him, including a 40-day deadline to form the new government alone, independent of Sadr himself. After the framework forces rejected the coordinating project of Sadr, which included the formation of a national majority government with a broad program that extends for the next 4 years, at a time when those forces are demanding a consensual government in which all the winning forces in the elections participate and do not exclude anyone. So at least Sadr is a man of his word, it appears. The move was considered a new political maneuver by Sadr, especially after his allies from the Kurdish and Sunni political forces announced their adherence to an alliance with him and not to proceed with any government that does not include the participation of Sadr's movement in it. Today, Thursday, the prominent leader of the Sadr's movement stated that the leader of the movement, Sadr, rejected a request submitted by the leaders of the Coordination Framework Alliance to meet him in Najaf as part of an initiative for a banquet at Sadr's house to discuss the crisis. And he apologized for receiving one of them before the expiry of the 40-day period that ends after Eid al-Fitr holiday at the beginning of May, noting that the leaders of the Sadr's movement are also prohibited from meeting and entering into discussions at the present time. So saith Sadr, so you better do it. The tripartite alliance between Sadr, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, and the Alliance for Sovereignty have proven its cohesion by the refusal of all Sadr partners to abandon it and accept other political offers away from him. In addition, a member of the Sovereignty Alliance, Saleh, described the tripartite alliance, Save a Homeland, as coherent, strong, and stable, adding that the Alliance of Sovereignty adheres to their partnership with the leader of the Sadr's movement, that's Sadr, of course, and will not abandon this alliance and go with the coordination framework, even if submitted he has any temptation from position and others. On the other hand, the prominent member of the coordination framework, Fatlawi, said in a coalition that continues to move around resolving the crisis with other political forces, speaking of the formation, a new negotiating committee that brings together the blocs of the coalition, the coordination framework that is, and its allies to enter into negotiations with the other blocs to find a solution to the current political impasse. And he indicated that the coordination framework is still working on the open channels of dialogue with the leaders of the Sadr's movement, Sadr himself, in order to hold meetings with him in order to discuss the framework's initiative directly with him, and in the coming days, this may succeed. The coordination framework is still steadfast on its position by forming the largest bloc with the Sadr's movement from exclusively Shiite political forces and then choosing the prime minister in consensual manner within the Shiite house. And there is no retreat from this matter, and we will not proceed without the Sadr's movement's participation with us in forming the largest bloc, and the government knew. So look, you got two stubborn, unmovable forces, Sadr and the coordination framework. Again, the coordination framework has a lot to lose, a lot to fear. Sadr getting in there with his people. We already see a lot of people from the coordination framework are being indicted and investigated. So you can understand they're wanting to choose their people to be in there to keep an eye on everything that's going on. They went on to say Sadr is still insisting on proceeding with the majority government, and this is why the positions of some parties and personalities, especially the independent ones, will change after the failure of the coordination framework to form the new government within 40 days. And for this, the tripartite alliance can obtain a quorum for holding the presidential election session by attracting new parties with them, and that will most likely happen. The tripartite alliance during the 40-day period will not stand idly by, but will certainly have undeclared moves and some independent parties and personalities in order to ensure the pressure during the presidential election session, which is hoped to be held after the holidays, that is, after the end of the Sadr deadline for the coordination framework. The Iraq political scene is becoming increasingly complex in light of the continued lack of chances of agreements between the main forces in the country regarding the file of forming a new government, despite the lapse of more than 5 months since the election. What do you guys think out there? Do you think this government's going to get formed? Or do you think parliamentary is going to get dissolved and new elections come? I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. A long-term transition period that extends to Al-Qademi and Sulay Burham, including cabinet and constitutional amendments. Obviously, that just makes sense. If there's no new government taking over, the old government will continue in its place until otherwise. So the source told the news about a political movement that is trying to keep the Prime Minister Al-Qademi in his position with the support of the Triple Alliance in return for Saleh, the President of the Republic, continuing in his position as well, and he is supported by the forces of the coordination framework. Saleh is, but definitely not al-Kadhimi. The sources said that the foresight includes marking amendments in the cabinet that can pass through the Triple Alliance, which has more than 180 parliament seats, allowing it to change some ministers, and also in coordination with the coordination framework that wants to end the political blockage. The source says that Iraq is heading for an undeclared emergency with the project, and it could develop into an emergency transitional project during which the constitution will be amended and an election law will be enacted that imposes a new appropriate mechanism for selecting the president and the prime minister. Yeah, they need to do something. However, an academic in political science believes that Sauder wants, after the 40-day deadline, bypassing the issue of electing a president and al-Kadhimi's resignation, so that his majority go to elect a government commissioned by Saleh. Becoming electing the government does not require 2/3. The academic experts say that the 40-day period given by Sauder is not enough to make understandings and alliances with other blocs, which means that al-Kadhimi will remain as prime minister for a longer period. And in the event of a cabinet reshuffle, this will include 4 vacant ministries in al-Kadhimi's government due to the ministry's victories in the recent election and the resignation of other ministers. The Minister of Labor and Immigration left their post after taking the constitutional oath. Is Saleh going to be the president and al-Kadhimi the prime minister? I believe that's what Sauder wanted, but we will see. So at least for now, the same people who have been putting Iraq back on track are still in charge until something has been resolved. Anyways, that's it for now. You guys let me know what you think. Hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I surely do appreciate it. And I'll catch you later. I'm out.